Hey everyone, you're probably wondering why you're looking up at the ceiling. Well, let's just say this is something that, well, I would do through audio video, but since my computer's off right now and I'm not going to turn it on till later, I decided, you know what, might as well, I just figured, screw it, I'm just going to do it like this. Because I'd done this the other night, or actually the other morning, very early in the morning, about an hour, basically about an hour or so before my mom went to work. And I looked and I thought about it and I said, no one's going to understand a word I said. Nobody. Nobody's going to understand a word I say. So I decided, screw it, I'm going to redo it. And basically it explains right there, why people like me, it's like, why people like certain fantasy situations. And the fantasy situations I'm talking about is, as TV Tropes calls it, the lustful melt slash melting trope, or as I call it, the melting gag at times. The invisibility part, the transformation deal. Those are the top three. And you probably wonder to yourself, and you probably ask yourself, okay, why do people like that? Well, again, it's about fantasy. You see, let's take a look at transformations, for example. Transformations, shape-shifting, whatever you want to call it, is basically something that people have been fans of since the beginning of animation, beginning of film. And I've always thought that, man, wouldn't it be something if we could really do what we see on the screen? Or wouldn't it be something if we could do what we're really reading in comics, or most notably in fan fiction? One of the most popular traits of the shape-shifting transformations is not the ability just to turn yourself into other people. No. One of the more popular traits is being able to turn into different objects and remain that way. There are certain stories that I've read at fanfiction.net that involve some very well-known characters, written by a good friend called Chaotic Lover 2, or Ingram Rays on Facebook. And they, along with those that help them out, have written stories to where the female members of the cast obtain these kind of abilities. Now, it's not just them either. You go to places like Invisibility, DeviantArt and all that, and you see not just fan fiction, but you see fan art of different characters or original characters or stories to where the characters, male or female, obtain these abilities. And again, like I said, one of the more popular traits of the transformation shape-shifting is the ability to turn into different objects, into basically inanimate objects. For example, let's say someone needed to get to a destination which was 50 miles away. And let's say the friend, male or female, had the ability to transform or shapeshift into anything. That male or female friend could shapeshift or transform themselves into a car or to a motorcycle and help them get down there. See, it's stuff like that. It's stuff like that that fans find interesting because they think, wouldn't it be something if that power was real? If we could have that ability for real. It's like, wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't it be something? Now, the invisibility fantasy part of it is something that, again, just like the beginning of film, people have been intrigued by. Because they've always thought, well, wouldn't it be something if invisibility was real? Now you might say, well, it's kind of real in the military with stealth and stuff like that. Yeah, it is. But we're talking really invisible. I mean, if you've seen classics like the original Invisible Man, the original 1940 Invisible Woman, the remake, some of the Topper films and stuff like that. If you've seen the 1983 movie pilot on NBC for The Invisible Woman, which unfortunately was not picked up as a series. Or if you see The Invisible Kid or Invisible Mom and stuff like that, those kind of films. We're talking about the kind of invisibility to where it's like you just completely disappear. And or some sites on the some sites on the internet have indicated you TI or you T it or you I completely. Now, the reason people were, just like with the transformation deal, the reason people are intrigued by this and fans of it is because, again, they always think, well, wouldn't it be something if we had the power of invisibility? We could do anything and nobody would know it. We could do this, we could do that, we can have fun with ourselves. Because believe me, I've actually read some stories online where people will they'll have the characters turn invisible and all you see left is their clothes, and they'll act like, hey, I'm the living clothes, or something like that. Stuff like that makes them intriguing. And they always think, well, wouldn't it be something if we could have that power for real? You know, that's why they're fans of it. And then, of course, you got the lustful melting fantasies, courtesy of TV tropes, naming it that. And basically, the reason they're fans of that is it's a physical, especially in animation, if not in fiction, in fan fiction, or even comics. It's basically it's a metaphor that's brought visually to life. Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, Polyvoo-Woo's cartoon of Popeye the Sailor Man, you know, all this basically brought it to life due to the fact that it's a metaphor for the expression. I remember one episode of the Major Dad series. The Major Dad character and the wife were in, I think, a hotel room, and they were starting to make out a little bit. And I think it was their second honeymoon or something like that. They started to make out, and the wife says she's melting. Now, of course, visually you don't see her turn into a puddle or anything, she just says it. Now, when you put that same term or metaphor to animation, basically it becomes visually real. Like, let's say, of course, Minerva Meek, one of the more popular characters in the 90s, in the 90s from the WB. Minerva Meek from Animaniacs. Two of her solo cartoons had her do what was dubbed the lustful melt. She does it in Moon Over Minerva when she sees the nerdy Wilfred Wolf's Fabio alter ego again. And she does it when she runs and jumps right into her friend's cousin's arms and melts literally right through his arms. That visually is the metaphor of what the Major Dad wife character said come to life. Now you might say to yourself, well, why are people fans of that? Because again, it's always intriguing. Wouldn't it be something if that kind of power was real, or if that kind of ability was real? You know, I've been a fan. You know, I'll say this: I've been a fan since I was about 5, 6 years old. I remember watching on TBS when it was WTBS back. I think it was '85. I remember watching the Tom and Jerry Funhouse. And it was basically a compilation. It was an hour-long compilation of not just Tom and Jerry cartoons, but of cartoons of all kinds. Not all kinds, but cartoons from different studios. You had the Looney Tunes, you had Droopy, and of course you had Popeye. And I think you had a few Yogis in there too. But I remember watching one time, I was watching on WTBS. I was watching it, and it came on with Polyvoo-Woo's, which was a Popeye cartoon from 1956. And I remember watching it, and towards the end, after Popeye kisses Olive on the arm, she tells him she's feeling like butter. Or she tells him that she's, you know, like butter in his hands. And next thing you know, you see her melting down into a puddle of butter that's flowing down the living room floor. And all you see on the flowing puddle of butter is just her face. You just see eyes and a smile, and that's it. And what's really crazy about that too is if you slow it down, zoom it in, what's crazy about that is if you get the DVD, a DVD that has that cartoon, you slow it down, you pause it, you zoom in, you step by step on it. It almost looks like, because, how puddles are, right? They kind of dry up, you kind of get like little spots, like little dry spots in there. Well, it kind of looks like she has like some dry spots kind of opening up when she's slowing down. And it's like one of them just touches her eye. It's almost like her eye almost gets evaporated or something. But again, my point, what I'm trying to say is that's how I became a fan of it. That's how I became a fan. And when Tiny Toons and Animaniacs came around, I was surprised that they brought that back. But what surprised me even more, folks, was they had done it before in 1944 in the Porky Pig cartoon Sooner Crooner. Basically, you have this black and brown hen. And when she's hearing this Frank Sinatra-like rooster, or whatever his name is, chicken, whatever, singing, she literally melts down into a rippling puddle with just a little red mohawk or whatever it is sticking out. She's just rippling. And she's not brought back. And it's like she stays that way until the Bing Crosby rooster or chicken comes in and starts serenading the female chicken as well. But the point is, because of stuff like that, back when I was a kid, I became a fan of it. I became a fan, and I was surprised, like I said, that Tiny Toons and Animaniacs had brought it back the way they did. But you know what was even more ironic is it's not just the lustful melt part of it. The melting part of it, as TV tropes called it, was also integrated into the learning curve part 2 of Silver Surfer. It was made into a power for Alex Mack of The Secret World of Alex Mack, a live action show, if you will. It was basically an ability and power for ink in Batman Beyond. I mean, it's there and it shows you the strong influence of it. But what really intrigued me a lot, and what really made people fans, male and female, what made us fans of it was, and I'm not trying to be offensive here or anything, but I'm just stating from what I have seen and stating from fact. The reason people like me, people, male and female, like me, are fans of these kind of things, is because what intrigues us the most, and again, I'm not saying this to be mean, I'm not trying to single out anybody, but it's just from fact that it seems that the female gender is the one that a lot of this happens to the most. A lot of the transformation, shape-shifting into different people or objects. Well, different people, like the transformation, shape-shifting into different people or inanimate objects or vehicles. The invisibility lately, and of course the lustful melting deal. I mean, that's why a lot of people, male and female, are fans of it. Because it's like, what intrigues them is not just, what intrigues them is not just the fact that they're curious as to what it would be like, what it would be like to have all this happen in real life, have these kind of things happen in real life. But also what intrigues them is the fact that the female gender is always the one that a lot of this stuff happens to. The female is always the one. I mean, here's what I'm talking about. When they did The Invisible Woman in 1940, and they did the movie pilot for the show that never took off in 1983, and then they did the little scene with China Phillips in the Invisible Kid movie, and then of course the Invisible Mom stuff, it's always like the reason, and just my opinion, just my opinion, no offense or anything, but it seems to me that not only is it more intriguing to see a female in this position, but also I think because maybe also because it seems that they believe that a female will have more fun out of it. Will have more fun being able to be invisible and do things that no one else would think of with that power. And the same thing with the transformation shape-shifting stuff. Like a female will have more fun and be more creative with the ability to turn into other people or into other inanimate objects or vehicles. And the same thing with the I'm melting, lustful melt stuff. It's like they would have more fun if they could have the ability to melt down into a puddle, flow into cracks and stuff, or just melt out of, erosion or admiration. Erosion or admiration. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is why, in my opinion, people like me and other people like myself and others out there, male and female, are fans of this stuff. Not just because we always think what would it be like if it really happened, if we had that kind of stuff, if we were able to do that kind of stuff in real life. It's more like, what intrigues us is why the female gender is always chosen. And I think that's what makes us even more of a fan. Like is the fact that the writers of the fan fiction stories, comics, novels, books, movies, and stuff like that, shows, animation, and all that. It seems they always like to target. It's always like they like to make the female, the primary owner or center of all that I mentioned. But again, it's really, and again, that's what really makes people fans of it. Not just because we are intrigued of what would it be like if everything that I mentioned, all that stuff that I mentioned in fantasy could happen in real life, but it's more along the lines of, but the intriguing is more along the lines of why only a female is always chosen. I'm not saying they always are, but it seems a majority of stories, comic books, fan fiction, movies, animation, television shows, live action animation, it seems the female is always the equivalent with these powers. And I believe, in my opinion, that's why we've become fans of them. And that's why I became a fan of it, because not only was it intriguing to me as a kid growing up, but also intrigued me the fact that, well, wait a minute, it's only the female, which was weird. But that is why people have become fans of fantasy. Basically, it's going to say something of these certain fantasies. Why people are fans of certain certain fantasies. So I thought I'd just kind of get that off my shoulders. Tell me what you guys think down below. Video response if you like. I'll talk to y'all later.